I've always loved the convenience of a 24-hour McDonald's. Safe, familiar, predictable. But one night, I learned that safety is an illusion. I walked into a nightmare, and what I saw in that restaurant still keeps me awake at night. I'll never forget the faces or the silence that followed. After finishing a late-night shift, I stopped at a 24-hour McDonald's to grab a quick bite. It was 12:30 a.m., and the parking lot had a handful of cars, but the place was oddly quiet. Inside, the usual sounds were missing. No murmured conversations, no beeping fryers, not even the clatter of trays. The lights buzzed faintly overhead as I approached the counter. No one was there. I stood for a moment waiting, then tapped the small service bell. Its sharp ding echoed through the silence. A faint noise followed, a dull thud coming from somewhere in the back. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cutting through the stillness. No reply. I leaned over the counter looking into the kitchen. Trays of half-assembled burgers and scattered fries sat untouched, as if everyone had walked away mid-shift. A cold unease crept in, but I shook it off. Turning back to the dining area, I noticed something odd. Behind a booth in the far corner, a pair of shoes jutted out at an awkward angle. Hesitating, I stepped closer. It was a man in a McDonald's uniform sprawled face down on the floor. He wasn't moving. I froze, heart pounding. I froze, my eyes fixed on the motionless man on the floor. My mind raced, unsure whether to help or call for someone. Before I could move, the faint thudding sound returned. Louder this time, coming from the hallway leading to the stockroom. The door creaked open and a man stepped out. He wore a dirty, oversized hoodie, his face pale and drawn, eyes wide and bloodshot. In his hand, a large kitchen knife dangled loosely. He looked at me and his lips curled into a slow, unsettling grin. My stomach tightened as he started walking toward me, silent and deliberate. My pulse exploded as I bolted for the exit, my shoes sliding on a crumpled soda cup. Behind me, the man's footsteps slammed against the tile, closing in fast. I reached the glass door and yanked the handle. It didn't budge. The man was only feet away, his grin widening. My eyes darted around before landing on a metal chair nearby. I grabbed it and hurled it through the front window with a crash. Shards rained everywhere, slicing into my arms as I scrambled through the jagged opening. Running to my car, I glanced back. The man stood in the shattered window, silent, watching me. I drove straight to the police station, hands shaking, blood soaking my sleeves. I barely got the words out, but they understood enough to act fast. Officers swarmed the McDonald's within minutes. The man was gone, but in the stockroom they found 2 employees, bound, gagged, and barely clinging to life. The attacker turned out to be a drifter with a violent history. He'd been hiding inside for hours, waiting for someone to wander in. I still think about the look in his eyes. Calm, deliberate, like he was playing a game. I used to see McDonald's as a quick stop. Now I always look over my shoulder. No place is ever truly safe, especially when you're tired, distracted, or letting your guard down. Moments like these remind us to stay alert, trust our instincts, and never take our surroundings for granted. You never know who or what could be waiting. I've never been a paranoid person. I work long hours in a dull office job, and McDonald's is my guilty pleasure after late nights. But after what happened last week, I can't even drive past the Golden Arches without my stomach turning. It wasn't the food, it was something far worse. I'm a middle-aged office worker, the type who often clocks out long after dark. On nights like this, when exhaustion takes over, I pull into McDonald's for a quick, familiar meal. It was a rainy Tuesday, just shy of midnight, and the drive-thru was nearly empty. Quiet, except for the hum of my engine and the faint patter of rain on the windshield. As I rolled up to the intercom, I noticed an old, beat-up car parked crookedly across several spaces. The driver, a man slouched in his seat, stared straight at me. When our eyes met, he quickly turned away. I placed my order, my voice cutting through the static of the intercom. As I waited, a strange unease crept in. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The beat-up car had moved. It was now parked directly behind me, its headlights glaring. The driver sat still, his shadowy figure visible through the windshield. At the pickup window, the employee handed me the bag with shaky hands. She leaned in slightly, her voice low. "Be careful," she whispered, eyes darting past me. Confused, I nodded and drove to a parking spot. I unwrapped my food, trying to shake the feeling. I sat in my car, unwrapping my burger, the steady rain drumming on the roof. Across the lot, near the exit, the beat-up car had reappeared. The man from earlier sat motionless, his gaze locked on me through the windshield. I told myself I was imagining things. He was probably just waiting for someone. I focused on my food, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach. When I started my engine, the other car roared to life. I pulled out of the lot, watching the headlights in my mirror. At the gas station a mile away, I stopped. So did he. He lingered at a distance, his engine idling. My hands tightened on the wheel as I turned down side streets, trying to shake him. The headlights stayed in my mirror, unrelenting. Desperate, I turned into a dark cul-de-sac, hoping he'd drive past. Instead, the beat-up car followed, its engine cutting off as it parked behind me. Heart pounding, I locked my doors. The man climbed out, a long object, maybe a tire iron, gripped in his hand. He moved toward me, slow and deliberate. Before he reached my car, another set of headlights appeared. A random car turned into the cul-de-sac. The man froze, spun back toward his car, and sped off into the night. I pulled into my driveway, every muscle tense, my eyes scanning the quiet street. Inside, I double-checked the locks and called the police, recounting every detail. They took my statement and later told me the man fit the description of someone wanted for a recent carjacking and assault in the area. The confirmation sent a chill through me. I've visited that McDonald's countless times, always seeing it as an ordinary, safe spot. Now, the thought of a late-night burger reminds me how quickly routine can unravel into fear. It's a stark reminder. Danger doesn't announce itself. It waits. Always stay aware of your surroundings. Familiar places can quickly become anything but. It's easy to assume nothing will happen, but as I learned, you never know who's watching or waiting for an opportunity. After a long shift at the hospital, McDonald's was my little guilty pleasure. I'd sit in the parking lot, eat in my car, and enjoy a few quiet moments to myself. But one afternoon, that simple routine turned into a nightmare. One I'll never forget. I'm a nurse in my late 20s, just wrapping up a 12-hour shift. It had been a long day, filled with chaos, and all I wanted was some quiet. I pulled into the McDonald's parking lot, craving fries and a milkshake before heading home. The sun was bright, and the warm afternoon air made everything seem normal. The lot was busy, cars pulling in and out, people coming and going. I decided to stay in my car, eating in peace. It's something I do often after a shift to avoid the usual crowds inside. I was halfway through my meal when I noticed a car parked a few spaces away. A child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, was sitting alone in the back seat, looking around anxiously. The windows were cracked, and the child seemed to be waiting. I assumed the parent had gone inside to grab food. I kept eating, thinking little of it. 10 minutes passed, and still no one had returned. The child was now fidgeting, hands pressed against the window, mouthing something. The look on their face made my stomach tighten, as if they were trying to say something important. I got out of my car and approached cautiously, not wanting to scare the child or overstep. As I neared the window, the child suddenly banged on it, their eyes wide with panic. They whispered frantically, "Help me!" Alarmed, I knelt down and asked, "Where's your parent?" The child shook their head, pointing to the floor of the car. I peered inside, and my heart sank. A pair of shoes were sticking out from behind the driver's seat, as if someone was lying on the floor. I tried the door, but it was locked. The child started crying, glancing nervously over their shoulder. I quickly pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking as I tried to keep my voice steady. I kept talking to the child, assuring them help was on the way. The minutes felt like hours, and just as I was about to lose my patience, the driver's door suddenly opened. A man emerged, his eyes wild with rage. He yelled at me to step away from his car. His clothes were disheveled and his hands were smeared with something dark. Blood. He lunged at me, but before he could reach me, people nearby saw the commotion and rushed over. He panicked and bolted, leaving the car behind. The police arrived within minutes, their sirens blaring in the quiet parking lot. They opened the car door, and I heard one of them swear. Inside, a woman was crumpled in the footwell, barely breathing and unconscious. The child clung to me, crying hysterically as paramedics rushed to her mother's side. As they worked to stabilize her, the police told me the man was likely the woman's partner, and he'd been assaulting her. He had been trying to flee with the child when he realized he couldn't escape. The weight of it all hit me, and I struggled to breathe too. Finished giving my statement to the police and sat in my car, still shaken. The mother survived, thank God, but I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't noticed the child that afternoon. What if I hadn't gone to my car? What if I hadn't acted when I did? I went to McDonald's to decompress, to escape the chaos of my job for just a little while. Instead, I found myself in the middle of something I'll never forget. Something that reminded me how quickly everything can change. It still haunts me, even now. We always hear about bad things happening in dark alleys or deserted roads. But sometimes the most terrifying moments happen in broad daylight, in the most ordinary places, like a McDonald's parking lot. If you've ever felt like something was wrong but couldn't quite put your finger on it, these stories are a reminder that sometimes paying attention makes all the difference. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe for more real-life horror stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. And if you've experienced something strange or unsettling at a McDonald's stop or anywhere, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it.